there was a plan, 100% a plan, and there was a process and a checklist that they were focused on in destroying or driving the Indian out of the Indian. And that was part of it. With my oldest aunt, she spent the most time in residential school. And it was only, I think it was 5 years now back, that I went to visit her. Throughout her life, she was very cold, very stern, very cold, very unapproachable. And it was very much 100% her experience in residential school. 5 years ago, I went to go visit her and have coffee. And when I got up to leave, she stood up and she said, "I need a hug." I nearly dropped because I grew up with her since as far back as I could remember. She spent a lot of time babysitting us when my parents were out hunting or something. Not even a hug, not even any sign of physical touch or anything like that. It was very much stern, like she provided well, but she was very stern. And when she stood up and said, "I need a hug," I was clearly shocked. And she just said yes. It took me, I think she was 74 at the time. She said, "It took me to become 74 years old, I finally know how to hug." So she gave me a hug. That brought me to tears. Not because of being able to hug her, but thinking about what she went through and what she missed out on through something as simple as a hug. She couldn't even hug her own children her entire life until recently. And now she finally learned how to love herself. And that really drove it home to me that she was in her teens when she went to residential school. So she missed out on, she got those teachings at home most definitely from my kokum and musum, but she was ripped away from the home. She never got anything beyond those teachings. She learned about them, she was told about them, but she never, you know what I mean? She didn't internalize them. Because she knew every one of those other, but to truly be able to practice those? No. Because the next stage, when she was ripped away, was when she was going to be learning about this. So she missed it. It destroyed her chance of ever truly being able to experience any of these other teachings beyond what she gained at home. So see, very much premeditated, very much planned out. And it was successful because she spent 74 years not being able to love or show love or loving herself. So now in her later years, she's still alive, but she's so full of love now, hugging and telling her kids finally, "I love you," and telling everybody, in fact, that she loves them. But she missed out on a lifetime because at this stage in teenage, she was stripped of the ability.
I remember growing up with my grandma, and I never heard the word "sagihitn" for "I love you," but through their actions I knew that they loved me.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned the most. And when I got married, my husband was in residential school, and I never heard "I love you" from him, and yet I married him because I didn't. I learned so much. I guess I learned to love myself. I teach that to my grandkids, my kids, and now we hear the constant "I love you," even when you're talking on the phone. One of my grandsons just recently got married, and this lady came from an abusive home, Family always say I love you even when you're talking on the phones, he said to my grandson. So yeah, we use that, but I often wonder how much you have to really mean it. Me and my grandsons, I don't know what it is, but it seems like I love my grandchildren more than my kids.
I know. Yeah, I know what you mean, and because I was thinking about that, and it's because and I think Kim and I talked about it too, because we noticed too that we definitely love our grandchildren much more, but it was because we were spending so much time teaching them about all of these teachings: humility, respect, obedience, and even though we showed them our love, but that wasn't our focus. Now with our grandkids, it feels like it's not our responsibility. We still show them all of these, but it's their parents who need to model these teachings within them, and we could focus on love with our grandchildren, because we're no longer well, they're supposed to be leaving home, and not mine, they all flew back, so I got my number of grandchildren living with me. So
at home. My dad was by no means, he was not mean, but he just didn't show affection or told us or like it. So when I had kids, I said, when I have kids, I'm not gonna teach my kids this way. So this is what I do at home. Today I have two older boys and one baby girl. When I get home, they'll phone me or text me every day where I'm at. When I get home, they'll tell me I love you. But I missed that when I was growing up. All because of the residential school.
yeah,
And
yeah.
just,
And that's true, and that's, like I said, it was by design. That's what it was designed to perpetuate that. But thankfully, we didn't. They were successful with the people who attended residential school, but they were not successful in ending it, because we still managed to continue those teachings and those traditions.
When my dad went to residential school, they had a sister there, and they don't know what happened to her. He went to his grave wondering why, what happened to her. But yeah, it's sad.
It's not.
I'd like to share a little bit about the mission school. I was 8 years old when the Indian agent came to pick us up. I'd never left home ever, or even went to camp anywhere. I didn't know a word of English, and it was really different and very cool. And there was this one incident where I have a younger brother. He wasn't even quite 6 years old, and him and I got taken, and an older brother, three of us. And then a few days after, we were allowed to go play outside. And I didn't know there was an imaginary line like this, like boys on one side, girls on this side. Like we were never allowed to play together. The girls stayed on one side, the boys over the, even if it was your brother. And then I didn't know there was a line there. And so when I went out for recess, my little brother come running to me, and he was crying. And he said, I want to go home and pray. And I grabbed him and I hugged him. All of a sudden, somebody pulled my hair and just separated us like this and said, bad, bad, bad. I didn't know what that word meant at the time, but we were not allowed to hold hands or even hug anybody, ever. Ever, the whole time we were there. If you had a little friend and you want to hug them or even hold their hand, that was bad. Everything was bad. You couldn't, you were allowed to sit next to someone, but you were not allowed to show love. And that's what my Auntie Mary grew up with, and that's what I grew up with. You know, and thank God I had, good parents that loved me and showed me. But for a few years, I was angry. When I'd come home, I was angry. When I was a teenager, I was angry, and I used to wonder why we have to go to this mission school. And my dad said, he tried to explain to me that he loved me, but I needed an education, and this was how it was, and that's why he let me go. And I know that now, but it took me a long time to understand why we had to leave. And then a few years down the road, we were like maybe 2 years, and then we all had, they call them little charges. We looked after a younger person, that little person that came to school the first time. So that was Kathleen. I took care of her. I made sure her face was washed. And I was like maybe 10 years old, and she could have been about 7. I wasn't much older than her, but I took care of her.
Started at
Yeah, I made sure her hair was combed, and her fingernails were clean, and everything took care of her. And that's how it was. And then the following year, I took care of another of her sisters. And that's how we kind of took care of the younger ones. We were taught a lot of responsibility. We learned that and learned how to, take care of each other. It was a very sad time. And just recently now I can talk about it. I couldn't talk about it before, and it was hidden. We were not allowed to tell our parents how bad it was. The nuns would say, you do not talk about what happens here, it stays here. And I remember I might have been about 12 years old, and we were allowed to write a note home. We were allowed to write a letter. And I wrote a letter, and I told my dad. They didn't know how to read and write. They'd never been in school, but I had an older sister that could read. And I wrote in there that it was a horrible place, and I was sad, and I wanted to come home, and it was not a good place to be. And the nun came to read it. She ripped it up in front of me, and she said, no, you write how good it is here, how you love to be here. That's what you write, and I will mail it. But if you don't write that, I'm not sending nothing home. And so I thought, well, I sat there and I thought, well, what could I write about? And I had a little puppy at home, a little mini puppy, about that, and her name was Tippy, and I loved her. So every letter I wrote home, I asked about Tippy, because that was safe, because I could ask about that, but I couldn't tell how horrible it was to be. And then I'd come home in the summertime, my sister would laugh at me, my older sister. Lillian, every time you write a letter home, you're always asking about your dog. You never even ask about us, or and I couldn't tell her that I couldn't do it, that I was not allowed to. But I laughed with her. That's funny, but it was not funny. But that's how it was. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing, Andes. I know how to hug.
Well, my sharing is about, like Lillian was saying, and we grew up in the same area. Like our family systems were loving and strong.
Yeah.
So with that young age till we got picked up by the Indian Agent, I was 6. And I was in residential school, both missionary, Protestant, and Catholic, for total of 8 years. And in the both residential schools had different teachings about religion. I won't say spirituality. It's just a religion. And in the Protestant one, we used to have to read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations and memorize enormous amounts of scripture. But later on in life, when I was having my children, I used to talk to my children, and I'd make sure they all would watch videos on Jesus and what the meaning of Christmas was. And because they're part Jewish, I'd make sure they'd be watching the Jewish side of things, Moses and Noah, and like all those things that were in the Bible. And then like I'm gonna share that story I shared with you yesterday, but part of the scripture in, like in the Bible is love your neighbor. Do unto others as you would have done to you. So, like it was a story about giving love all the time. And I'd be teaching this to my little kids. Isaac might have been 5, Luke 6, and I'd be, I guess, pretty much indoctrinating them with this idea of, like love other people. And one day my 5-year-old son Isaac, he comes and we used to talk about angels and heaven up to a point where at one point I was worried that he was too focused, like on home, going to heaven, going to, like where we go after. And I sat him down and I told him, Isaac, like we're not going to talk about this anymore. You were born for a reason. You have a destiny that you were given. You have a job to do here. And that's, we can talk about angels and heaven, like sometime. But then I was, when we were talking about loving and being a good neighbor and doing for others, taking care of others, and that's what I tend to do. I focus more on how I can help community. You know what I mean? Where sometimes I leave my family out. And then one day, 5-year-old, he's asking me, going, Mom, does God love himself? I was thrown by that. Here I'm so focused, telling this kid, indoctrinating them to, be good to your neighbor, be good to your friends, be good to everybody else. I forget about that part. And it took a little kid to bring me back to that. It was just kind of funny.
Yeah, but that goes back to the
Resonance.
Western
Yeah.
teachings where we're told we need to love everybody around us and give. And to focus on yourself as being selfish. Where our traditional teachings were focus on yourself before you try and focus outside. Thanks.
And throughout
Again.
all that Bussard years and even the Little Buffalo years, we were never allowed to speak Korean. Never. We could never, it's dropped if you speak Korean.
Yeah, unbelievable some of the, but again, it was all by design, structured. There was a plan in place.
Like when we were taken to residential school and when my dad told us, like we had to leave, he told us, like what not to do. Don't tease each other, like listen to what you have to do and do what they want you to do. Because when you come home, this is going to be life the way you left it. So, like those words helped me because I had faith. I had faith when I came home. I would, my family would be there. We would be going back to our culture and language. So, like that, we were taught that early because we could rely on our family. We could rely on our parents. They were there for us.